Just closing down the eyes and arriving in this moment, here and now. Sitting tall through the spine, your palms resting on your knees, your thighs, or maybe the arms of the chair, whatever's comfortable. And begin to become aware of your feet. Just notice the points where your feet touch the floor, where your shoes touch the floor. And sense the gravity, sense the steadiness, the stability where your feet touch the floor. Become aware of the points where your body touches the chair, your legs, your seat, where it touches the chair, the points of contact between your back, your arms, maybe the back of your head, where it touches the chair. Feel the sense of stability, of security, of support in this moment, here and now. Now begin to notice your breath. Don't make any changes. Don't make any judgments. Just notice. Is it short and shallow? Is it deep? Are you breathing into your stomach, your belly? Are you breathing into your chest? Do your shoulders inch upwards towards the ears, or do they remain steady? Just notice. Now begin to consciously shape the breath. Allow it to deepen. In every inhale, your breath fills the lower abdomen, the lower belly, and your chest remains still. With every exhale, feel a slight pull of your navel to spine as you guide the breath upwards and outwards. Inhale, breath enters through your nostrils but fills up the lower belly. Belly expands like water filling up a glass, filling up the bottom of the glass first. And exhale, slowly guide your breath upwards and outwards. Now begin to elongate the breath, perhaps to the count of 4. So inhale, 2, 3, 4, and exhale, 2, 3, 4. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, and exhale, 2, 3, 4. And continue like this a few more rounds by yourself. If you're able to elongate the breath to the count of 5 or maybe 6, you're free to do so. Otherwise, maintain the count of 4. Allow it to be effortless, slow, equal tide of inhales and exhales. Continue like this a few more times by yourself at your count. So we're all familiar with skyscrapers. Whether it's Wall Street, Canary Wharf, or even DIFC, there are 2 elements remain the same and are of utmost importance to the integrity of these buildings. The first is the foundation of the skyscrapers. In order to build up so high into the sky, you need to have a solid enough, deeply rooted enough, and stable enough foundation to keep the building steady, to keep it strong, to keep it balanced. The second thing integral to buildings is the built-in leniency in the tower, the built-in space which allows it to ever so slightly sway with the wind. This built-in provision of space ensures that it doesn't need to resist and doesn't need to fight everything that comes at it. And in this period of uncertainty around us now and anytime really, we could also benefit from strengthening our foundation and leaning into the space, leaning into the flexibility within us. This balance of resilience and flexibility will allow us to endure all the winds of change. So slowly, when you're ready, begin to release control of your breath. Begin to come back to this moment. And slowly flutter your eyes open, coming back to the space of the room. So welcome back, guys. Thanks so much for joining me in that short meditative exercise. So now I would like to introduce you to the first speaker for today, Dr. Oudi Abourachacra. Dr. Oudi is a founder of Inspired Results, a global performance coaching and training company. He's a chiropractor and an author of personal growth books for children. Today, he will share with you 3 ways to ignite your resilience. If anyone has any questions during his talk, feel free to put it into the box and we'll make sure he gets to them at the end.
All right. Thank you, Nikita. That was breathtaking. And thank you for the introduction as well. So I've been contemplating resilience for a long time. And I wondered, why are some people more resilient than others? And why is it that at times the resilient people sometimes lose their resilience? So I was sitting by the pool with my 5-year-old son. And I basically said to him, Eddie, it's time to go. And he said, Dad, can I stay longer? And I was like, son, we made a deal. You know, I said that when we go to the pool and I say it's time to go, you would agree, because then next time when I want to take you somewhere, I'm going to think twice, because I know it's going to be tough to, you know, take you out of the water. And so, you know, he looked at me with those beautiful, what do I want to say, velvety colored black eyes. And I just couldn't resist. I said, son, you know what? I'm going to make you a deal. I saw the opportunity in this. I said, son, I'm going to make you a deal. Look, if you can swim the width of the pool, shallow end to shallow end, not the deep end. If you can swim the width of the pool, not only are we going to stay longer, we are going to be the last people to leave. I'm going to wait for the lifeguard to kick us out. And his reaction was very reflexive. And what he said was, but Dad, I can't. And I was like, hold on a second, son. I don't know about every family in the world, but the Abourachacras, we don't say, I can't. He's like, okay, Dad, I'll try. I said, son, that's not going to cut it either. So, you know, he didn't really know what to think at this point. I said, Eddie, here's what I want you to think. Look at me. I want you to say, I can and I will. So he's like, okay, Dad, I can and I will. I said, no, son, just say it with some certainty. He said, I can and I will. It got loud. I kept kind of hyping him up. And then it got a little awkward because we were drawing some attention. And then I said, so now I want you to do it. Oh, I'm going to talk to you about the 3 ways to boost your resilience. And you're going to see that he was able to apply all 3. When he took the first, couple breaths, so he went under, came up, went under, came up. That's usually the limit. And he usually has to stand up at that point. Well, he was able to get the 3rd breath and then the 4th breath. And then he turned to me and I gave him 0 encouragement. I wanted him to be propelled from the inside out. I didn't say, well done, or I didn't clap or give him a thumbs up or smile, nothing, just like poker face. And so he kept going. It probably took about 17 breaths to get to the other side, maybe close to 20. And when he did, he gave me this beautiful big hug and he said, Dad, I love you. And he squeezed me so tight. I then allowed him to spend, as much time as we had before we were asked to leave. And it was just such a beautiful, beautiful experience. And what I want to do is I want to talk to you about resilience. And many of the things, Nikita, that you were teaching during the meditation was so spot on. And it's almost like we orchestrated this. And there was no dry run of this at all. And what's so cool is I'm going to talk about breath. I'm also going to use a skyscraper example as well. But I want to start with just a quick definition of resilience. You all know what it means in your own way. But resilience is basically overcoming difficulty or challenge. It's this elasticity or this give, I think you called it, this ability to bounce back and to get your train on the track again. So I want you just to consider right now what your number 1 challenge is during this whole COVID period. Is it business? Is it relationships? Is it your finance? Is it your health? Just consider maybe your number 1 challenge for the moment. And I want to just talk to you about the fact that you all can appreciate that stress isn't going anywhere. But there's really 2 kinds of stress. And when we say the word stress, we're usually talking about the negative one. But there is something called eustress, EU stress. That's the work of Nobel Prize laureate Heinz Selle. And eustress is basically the stress that you welcome into your life, right? It's usually stress that you choose. It's stress that you bring into your life for your own reasons, whether it's running a marathon or climbing a mountain or starting a business. But this is the positive kind of stress that brings out the best in you. But there's also negative stress, what we call distress. This could be doing something you dislike, or the kind of stress that shows up on your doorstep that you didn't welcome, you didn't invite, kind of like what's going on with COVID. I know that whenever I do events, for me, the most stressful part is all the admin and the planning and organizing that goes into making it a perfect event. What brings me the greatest inspiration, the eustress part of it, if you will, is presenting and speaking and doing what I love to do. So if we look at, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but if we look at distress, it basically taxes you. And it's unlike eustress where you actually come alive. Distress is that feeling that, I don't really want to be in this, right? It's like not being a mountain climber because you want to, but being chased up a mountain. If you want to think of it like that. But what I want to talk to you about today is about breaking the distress cycle, because you don't need help when it comes to eustress. You don't need help mostly, you mostly need help with distress, but you don't really need help with facing the things that you love doing, the challenges you've embraced and you've welcomed into your life by choice. So when we talk about distress, there's a cycle, and you know that the first thing that happens is you perceive something in your mind to be stressful. It triggers the sympathetic response, and then it changes your physiology, your hormones, your neurotransmitters. It affects the way you breathe. It affects the way you communicate, and then it again affects the way you think, and that creates this vicious cycle. So I want to help you break this distress cycle in 3 ways. The acronym is BMV, or body, mind, and voice, not to be confused with BMW. So body, mind, voice, BMV. We'll start with body. Nikita's already beautifully touched on some of these points, but I want to just let you know that, just consider for a moment before I go into this in detail, just think about what Eddie did. Because as you guys can see, he was tapping into these 3 areas. I'll review them later. But the first is breath. Now, if you look at the way babies, if you guys have children at home, you'll see that they breathe from their abdomen, like Nikita was saying. So when you breathe in, whether it's from your nose or from your mouth or even from your ears, you breathe in from the belly, from the diaphragm. Now, what people typically do when they're stressed out is they take deep breaths. And we know that that's effective. In fact, we know that if I hook up a blood pressure cuff and I take your reading and then I have you take some deep breaths for 30 seconds to a minute or so, you can probably reduce the reading. So it's a beautiful thing for people with blood pressure. But it's not just deep breaths that's the secret. It's also what Nikita was doing beautifully, which is trying to get you to have like a 1-to-1 ratio where your inhalation equals your exhalation. Now, the truth of the matter is when you take a full breath in, your exhale is usually going to match it. But there's a beautiful technique that Navy SEALs use called box breathing. And this technique is basically inhaling for a count. And Nikita was trying to push us, right, from 4 seconds to 5 or 6. But so if you were just to pick a random number, let's say 4. So and you were to take a deep breath in. So the inhale is 4. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Then it's hold, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4. Box breathing. They do this usually before they go into combat, just to calm themselves. Now, the other thing that's important, and again, Nikita beautifully touched on it, is where the breath should, where the movement should come when you're breathing. Some of you may have noticed that you're breathing into your chest and even your neck, possibly, if the breath is really coming up vertically. But the secret is to breathe diaphragmatically. So if you can do that, take deep breaths, balance the ratio 1-to-1, inhalation to exhalation, and make sure you breathe from your diaphragm. It's literally like a distress breaking and mind hack, if you will, because what it does, here's the deal. If I was to take you and drop you in freezing cold water, your breath would come up here into your neck. You take deep breaths like that. If, God forbid, one of your children came up to you and said, "Mommy, Daddy," you would think, what happened? What's going on? So we know that physical stress, emotional, psychological stress takes the breath away from the diaphragm and brings it into the thoracic area, the chest area, and even up into the neck. So when you're breathing that way, and there's nothing wrong because you're at Carrefour shopping or you're at the mall picking up something, you can create anxiety because what the mind will think, the subconscious mind will say, "Hey, I'm breathing this way when I should only be breathing this way when I'm stressed. So something must be wrong." But the beauty is, if you can learn to bring the breath down into the diaphragmatic area, into your navel area, so that an inhale brings the navel out and the exhale brings the navel back in towards your spine, what'll happen is, even under stressful circumstances, your mind will say, "Hey," the subconscious mind will say, "Hey, everything must be okay." So what was interesting with Eddie is when I was watching him underwater, I was looking at his tummy and he was breathing from his belly. So it would stick out like he was pregnant, then it'd come back in. So that's the first way to ignite your resilience, and that is to go back to the natural breath we were born with, and that'll help you break the distress cycle. Okay, the second, so BMV, body, mind, and voice. So mind, you can interrupt me for questions at any time, by the way. But so for the mind,
sorry, Oudi.
Yes.
I just put a question on the chat. So some of the meditation experts usually say that the exhalation should be longer than the inhalation. So could you just clarify that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So for example, if you're trying to stimulate, so when you're breathing, when your inhale is longer than your exhale, what you're doing is you're in sympathetic mode, which is fight or flight mode. And so that's why they're recommending to exhale longer, so that you stimulate your parasympathetic nervous system. You can do that as well. The balanced state, the centered state, is 1-to-1 ratio. That's why when you sleep, your inhale equals your exhale. If you watch, somebody sleeping, unless they're having a nightmare, typically your breath will be, 1-to-1 on a 1-to-1 ratio. Now, if you're trying to get to sleep, this is a beautiful technique, right? And if your stress is, over the top, you could extend your exhalation. Just so you know, what I decided to do today is just give you kind of one essential for body, mind, and voice, although I can go into detail on all three. So what you could do when you're trying to stimulate sleep and the parasympathetic nervous system, what we call the rest and digest system, you can exaggerate or lengthen your exhalation. So fantastic question.
Thank you. Thanks for your answer.
Yep. So again, feel free to interrupt me anytime. So I'll go into the mind now. So with the mind, what's important to understand is that usually we make statements about, what's going on in our lives at the moment. So a lot of these statements are self-limiting. I've heard people say something like, this is impossible. I can't believe this is happening. I'm never going to get through this, whether they're thinking of their business, their relationship, their health, whatever it is that COVID is kind of, shifting out of balance. But these statements can hold you back big time. And if I was to give you one thing when it comes to the mind, the limited time that I have, that would be to replace your statements with questions. Now, you want to be careful not to replace your statements with random questions, such as, why me? Why now? Now what? Or why does this keep happening to me? Every time I gain momentum, this happens. These are the wrong questions, just like the wrong statements that I mentioned earlier. What you want to do instead is realize this first before we talk about what the optimal questions are. Realize that in life, what's so beautiful is you don't actually need to have the right answers in life. So if you were to imagine being a private investigator, you wouldn't want to be wasting your time with statements like, what a psychopath is, I can't believe he did this, or how could someone do such? Those questions and statements get you nowhere. And again, you don't need to have the right questions. All you need are the right answers. You don't need the right answers. All you need to have are the right questions. So the right questions in this example of a murder mystery would be, what's the killer's motive? Was there forced entry? Are there any videos? I want you to apply this too in your life, is that if we can just ask the right questions and forget about the answer, like Nikita was doing when she was asking you to observe your breath. She said, do it without judgment. So don't judge. Just say, look, let me just consider just right now what some of the ideal questions would be. And I want you to consider this in the business context of, if you want to throw a great party, you wouldn't have to have the right answer. All you need is, okay, how can I make this a night to remember? How can I make this unforgettable? How can I touch people's hearts? You just need that kind of questioning that will do the hunting for you, that will hunt down the answers for you. I want you to consider two questions right now. The first question, so when I coach people, mostly CEOs, on getting clear in their life, what I usually do is something called a congruency test. So I look at what they think is important, what their goals are, and I help them compare those to how they're actually living, functioning, performing, and then we get them congruent. So let's just assume right now you're super congruent. You know exactly what you want out of life. The first question I want you to ask is, if it's a business challenge, what is the purpose of my business? If it's just general life, you want to ask, what is my top or most essential priority in life? What's my top value? What's my mission? Just pick one of those questions to start with. So let's say you got it. Let's say you pick the most essential thing in my life right now is this. Now what you want to ask is not, is there an opportunity right now? You want to ask, what is the opportunity right now to fuel whatever is most important to me? Be careful not to think there are none, or opportunity will come sometime later, in some sort of karma, if you will. Instead, I'd recommend that you consider what's happening right now. What are the opportunities that are presenting themselves right at this moment? You'll probably draw a blank initially, some of you. Some of you may have already done this, which is fantastic. But what you want to do is squeeze out as many opportunities as possible, because sometimes it's not the first one that you see. Sometimes it's a 25th one that's the light bulb moment that you can really seize and run with. So I would recommend, like a push-up, it's not a glamorous thing, but if you repeat it, the effect is glamorous. Repeating these questions is not glamorous, but again, if you keep doing so, it might just awaken a part of your mind that's possibly holding on to an idea, and you might be able to bring that to life. So I can give you some of the opportunities some of my coaching clients discovered. One was to redefine my core values for my business, to redefine my life mission statement, to reconsider my personal finances, my investments, my savings, my overheads. Some of these are business people, as you can see, to sharpen my leadership and communication skills, empower my sales skills, to strengthen my relationship with my family. So these are some of the opportunities that they were able to bring to the surface. You can see with Eddie, we were able to get him into a mindset of I can and I will, right? So he was breathing right. And he was also in that state of mind that I can and I will. And he clearly saw an opportunity, right? The opportunity to him was basically that I'll be able to stay here till it's dark. We'll be the last one to leave the pool. This memory with Eddie, this story, is still alive today as it was 4 years ago. He would be 9 in September. We talk about it on the same time. We reflexively. I'll jump to voice unless there's a question first. So BMV, body, mind, voice. Voice is about changing your language. I'm not talking about the sound you make, although when you are congruent, you resonate at a different level. But what I want to talk about now is about changing your language. I used to find myself on a regular basis saying that I'm bad with names. In fact, I'd forget someone's name and say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm bad with names. And I'd find myself repeating that over and over again until a coach pulled me to the side and said, oh, do you realize you're a coach and you're still doing this? And I was like, man, that's such a great point. This is early on in my career. And I realized that just saying I'm bad with names makes me bad with names. It's like I'm watering the tree of being bad with names. I just help it grow stronger roots. Like the skyscraper example Nikita was talking about, if you can get your breath, your mind, and now your voice, which we'll talk about, working for you instead of against you, you lay that really strong foundation and you'll have less of that sway. And if you do sway, you recoil and rebound quickly. So here's what I want you to do with your voice. People may be asking you right now, like, how you doing? How's life? How's it going with what's going on right now? I would be very careful with how you respond, because you could be creating a self-fulfilling prophecy by saying things like, oh, I can't believe this is happening. This is nuts. I'm never going to be the same, that kind of thing. You want to actually structure your response of course, you want to find the opportunity first, because then it'll come out more authentically. You want to make sure that you're able to say stuff like, very interesting times. I'm able to appreciate opportunities that I wasn't able to appreciate before. Or, you know what, I've been able to capitalize on this, or this has really freed up time for me to invest in this part of my life. That kind of thing. If you can communicate in this way, a very simple recommendation, you may not only be empowering your life, but it may create a domino effect where the person you're speaking to may leave the call refreshed, and you may be getting them thinking like, wow, maybe I could be, communicating differently. Maybe I should be looking at it the way this person's looking at it. Some of my favorites are, surprisingly, I'm making the most of this. I'm connecting with my team. I realize there's so much to be grateful for. I'm okay. I'm discovering a new set of opportunities that didn't exist before. So that's it. Body, mind, voice. Very simple.
Just a question. A question from Ruchi Donna. She says, given that COVID-19 and with the lockdown, she's worried about the social development of her kids, because I guess in the usual climate or usual day-to-day life, everyone is, children used to meet playgrounds, schools, teachers, but now they're all cooped up, one mother, same environment. What would you suggest here?
Well, look, it's a challenge. You can only do what you can. I know if you're in some places in the world like Dubai, you can still go out and connect with people. I know in Abu Dhabi it's a little tighter. So I would recommend a couple of things. We started a reading initiative here at home. I write kids' books, and I can tell you right now, my kids are not fans at all. My son, my 8-year-old, thinks they're the worst books to ever hit the planet. And I think he's right in a lot of respects. But, in the lockdown, he basically consumed all his reading material, and he stumbled across my book, and it was a book called Move Your Body. He said, hey, Dad, what's this about? I said, son, it's real simple. It's about moving your body. It's about, there's no right way of exercising. If you like to run, run. If you like to skip, skip. If you like to swim, swim. And so he's been doing that. And so we started this reading initiative whereby kids can read to other kids around the world. Parents can read to kids around the world. Kids can read to parents. And we've created this this network socially where we're reading, recording, and sharing with each other. So if you can't physically connect with other children, we had my sister's daughter's graduation online. It was an online Zoom surprise graduation party. She just graduated from University of Toronto, Queens, outside of Toronto. And, we just did the best we can. So I would recommend, if you can't physically connect, you got to appreciate the other forms and make sure you're tapping into the other forms online and and just doing it that way, it's all you can really do. Unless you got a like-minded group of people. I do know some who are connecting. You know, there's people at the mall today when I went there. There was a few people having coffee. So you got to just kind of make the best of the situation you have and try to extract the opportunities that exist there.
So if anyone else has any questions for Oudi, we can put it into the box now. We'll give that a minute.
Sure. And then I'll just go into a quick wrap up here, Nikita.
Yeah.
So basically, so far you've walked away, hopefully, this call with three ways at least, you know, with your breathing, with your mindset, and obviously with the way you communicate, and obviously you're replacing your I can't and I tries with I can and I will. But I want to leave you with one last thing that's really helped me take this to another level. So I just want to let you guys know that when I was 21 years old in university, I completely hated it. And I felt like I was hoodwinked into getting into university, because when I was a teenager, I was on the boat with my sister. We just visited her friends. They live on a boat. They have a beautiful log cabin. The wind was blowing through my hair. I was sipping on a fruity drink. And I remember saying to my sister, I said, Samra, how do you live like this? And she was like, Oudi, there's two ways. She knew two ways. She knew where I was in my life. And she basically said, you either go to university or sell drugs. And I was like, okay, what kind of drugs are we talking about here? Just kidding. So I ended up going to university. When I got there, I was like, man, this is just a fancy word for more school. And I had my final exams ahead of me. This was my second year. And I was like, all right, just my finals. And then I got the summer, and then I can regroup kind of thing. And I developed this cough. And then I remember sitting in an office looking down at the floor when the doctor said that this is a mild form of cancer. My sister was completely devastated. I couldn't even speak. And to say that I was depressed was an understatement. Her friend, who was a medical doctor as well, it was very awkward for her to watch her colleague, brother, be diagnosed with cancer. But I want to just tell you that for the weeks and months that followed, I was very depressed, and I could barely crack a smile. And I still had my final exams to make matters worse. And the only thing that gave me a little bit of joy besides my family was Bob Marley music. I don't know why. I just started connecting with his music. And there was one particular song called Pass It On, and where there's a lyric that says, live for yourself, you live in vain, live for others, and you live again. And it got me thinking, I thought, what, if I'm going to die? Because see, I wasn't a library guy. I was a hockey player growing up in Canada. So, and I wouldn't be caught dead in a library. There's no internet back then. And my sister said it's a mild form of cancer, and I just took her word for it. But I had this premonition that this could be the end. And so basically, I thought, what, if I'm going to go, at least maybe I'm going to leave a gift for my family. I couldn't think of anything because all they wanted from me was to live. But then I thought, what, getting straight A's on my finals would do the trick. They would never believe it. Guys, to make a long story short, got the A's, to their surprise and mine. And when I told them I got the A's, my sister and my mom broke down crying. And I learned something so powerful. I learned that if you want to get an A in life, if you want to finish first, so to speak, and I'm not talking about beating anyone else, I'm talking your personal best. If you want to finish first as a personal best, put yourself second. And so that idea of finishing first by putting yourself second still rings true today for me, because I could never have gotten the A for me. Impossible. And God knows I tried. I used to always say I couldn't get an A if my life depended on it. And it was interesting that when my life did depend on it, it wasn't that my life depended on it that I got the A. It was that I was thinking about my family. So I think that this is the next level up in terms of bringing out your resilience, is doing things, and I know many of you already are, but dedicating things for other people. I dedicate almost every day to somebody ever since I was 21 years old, and almost every speech to somebody. And so I want to just leave you with that message that if you can empower your body, mind, and voice, and put yourself second, I think you'll turn this into an opportunity and really seize it. So thank you so much for the opportunity to speak here today, guys. If you have any questions, we'd love to handle them now.
So there are actually a couple of questions. One of them is, how can one cope with stress if they lose their job?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. Loss in general is the biggest one. I won't be able to back up what I'm going to say because I don't have a lot of time. But when I talk about death, I call death the longest living lie. Because I know when an ice cube melts, it turns into water. First law of thermodynamics, energy can't be created nor destroyed. The ice cube has not died. It's in a new form. And I think when water takes on an invisible form, when it goes into vapor, that's the most difficult form to appreciate, because you can't see the water cycle. You can't see that it's still part of the water cycle. And when I coach people on bereavement, that I get them to not only understand what I just said, because everyone understands it, but feels it, you know. You can get to a place where you feel it, because you can be miles away from someone and feel close. You can be sitting next to someone on the couch and feel miles apart. And so losing your job is part of life, right? It happens, unfortunately. And I know a lot of people that have lost their jobs, and initially they thought it was the worst thing that happened to them. And it eventually became one of the best things that happened to them. But again, if you look at that mindset, then you're gonna have to wait for some time down the road to reap the benefits. If you start right now, and in psychology, they call this benefit finding. And what they found is that the most resilient people on the planet have three things in common. One is benefit finding. What's the benefit of losing my job right now? How is this an opportunity? Like we talked about. It's an opportunity to start my own business, an opportunity to really do what I love. It's an opportunity to reconnect with my network, expand my network. And the list goes on and on, to spend more time with the people that I haven't been spending time with, for example. But the second thing they talk about in psychology is realizing that in life, suffering is built in. It's weaved into the fabric of life. It's there. And the third is that they control what they can. And these are the three things that I wanted to empower you with, because you have control over the way you breathe, the way you think, and the way you communicate. Hope that was helpful.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so then I think we have another question. How do you strengthen sales skills and be more resilient by Mind Hack?
Yeah, so I mean, I think right now the sales approach has to change dramatically, because this is not the time to reach out to people and start selling. I think this is an opportune time to reach out to people and first ask them if they're okay before you even pitch or sell anything at all. Just connect with people, invite people for a meeting, just follow up with them, see how they're doing. Follow up on your previous clients, your existing customers. Just stay connected with them, and then just try to figure out what their pain point is, what they really are looking for, how you can help in the greatest way. That's the best thing. I think people are constantly trying to sell when they should really just be connecting with people and seeing what their needs are, and then offering help. And then you're not really selling, they're just buying.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So we're gonna move on to the next speakers, but before we do, we've had a request for if you could propose some books to read on this subject. Maybe you can write those into the box.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah? Okay, great.
Thank you, Nikita. Thanks, Susan. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much. That was great. I think a lot of things to think about. Okay, so up next, I'd like to introduce Sneh Asnani and Jyoti Choitram. Sneh is an internationally accredited career coach and a supervisor at an accredited coaching certification school. Prior to coaching, she had a background in recruitment and has worked with the private and government sectors in the UAE. Jyoti is an experienced HR professional and an associate certified coach, and her areas of focus include balance, sustaining high performance, and career planning. So Sneh and Jyoti are going to be talking us through how to maintain balance and energy in a single space. So due to the fact that most of us are in countries that have enforced some degree of self-isolation within the last few months, we are faced with these new living conditions where we must work, parent, unwind, and exercise in the same space. So in this working from home culture, how can we achieve work-life balance and prevent burnout?
So I think it's important for us to really talk about what burnout is before addressing how we might actually prevent it. And burnout is something that occurs when we feel emotionally, physically, or mentally exhausted. And that happens when we as individuals are unable to meet constant demands. There are also so many different contexts where burnout can occur in our workplace or in our personal lives exclusively. But now that we have to juggle multiple priorities, work, personal priorities in one space, our daily tasks have become even more demanding. And just going back to one of the points that Oudi mentioned, that's where you can go from that eustress to distress.
Yeah, Sneh, I would agree with you. And I think another thing to think about with burnout is people tend to typically associate it with long hours and working extended periods of time, which may well be the case as you're trying to fit multiple roles in at the moment. But actually, one of the main sources of burnout is the ability to manage kind of different demands and conflicting demands at the same time, which is something I think, as you think about the different roles we're all playing at the moment in a single space, is actually putting more pressure and more dissonance on it, kind of cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we had received one of the questions earlier about holding multiple roles. So when it comes to working from home and holding so many different functions, for example, parent, spouse, mentor, for some individuals with young children right now, even teacher, it can lead to burnout or that feeling of overwhelm.
Yeah, and I think we've got used to calling ourselves burnt out or feeling tired or exhausted, so that we don't even recognize the symptoms in ourselves sometimes. So it is things like fatigue, sleeplessness, and things you typically associated with, but also some of the things around the feeling of emptiness or lack of purpose can also be kind of symptoms that you're experiencing burnout. And going back to the stress point, I think we all recognize that a level of stress is good and it's good for performance, but leaving kind of constant stress unchecked can lead to kind of longer term physical and emotional kind of concerns.
Mm-hmm. So once you recognize that you are experiencing burnout or on your way to burnout, what are some actions that you can take to regain your sense of balance?
So there are a couple of things to consciously create healthy habits to avoid burnout in these new circumstances. One of the things I think Oudi and Nikita have both brilliantly kind of articulated, and it is about paying attention to your words, your mind, the narrative behind the felt experience. Something that I've kind of come up with is also doing one thing at a time. So let me just bust the multitasking myth here. Neuroscientific research indicates that our brains cannot manage different tasks simultaneously. So rather, when we're multitasking, we're actually rapidly switching from one task to another. So multitasking actually decreases our productivity levels by 40% when compared to what we can do by focusing on one task at a time, or even in some circumstances, one role at a time. So this is inefficient and it can cause undue stress, distress. Therefore, it's really important to focus on single tasking, to actively schedule time in for everything we need to get done during the day.
If I can just chime in here just real quick. I've heard it put by Dr. Ivan Meisner that this is called, when you're multitasking, that's called continuous partial attention.
Yeah, you're constantly switching from one activity from another rather than trying to just stay focused on one. That actually puts more kind of stress on the working memory and can kind of lead to that kind of sense of doing more but actually achieving less. One of the things I was thinking about when you were saying that, Sneh, was around this kind of coming back to the theme of balance. And typically when we talk about work-life balance, we have an image in our head about a scale, work on one side and life on the other. But if you kind of change that image to a bit more of a wheel and think about the different spokes, representing different areas in your life. And if you think about, the concept of kind of where you put your time is as energy rather than time, and you start to focus on where am I putting more or less energy, you find that actually when you reflect on areas of where you're putting more energy but perhaps getting less output, you're actually putting less energy in some other areas, and that can lead to a sense of imbalance.
And Jyoti, I love the model that you shared I'd love to add another model to as a recommendation as well, which is focusing on what you can control. There was a question earlier about what you can do or how to manage stress or maintain resilience when you've lost your job. So look, with the coronavirus pandemic, we're facing a significant amount of uncertainty in our lives. And this impacts us as humans. It seeps into all areas, whether that is personal or professional or both. So with so many variables and moving parts during this time, it's natural for us to feel overwhelmed when we think about the future. I'd love to share this model in the book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Stephen Covey talks about a model discerning our circle of influence from our circle of control. So a useful exercise to combat this sense of overwhelm would be to list out all the things that you are worried about, fearful of, or have concern for, and then separate them into things that you can directly control and things that are out of your control. So Stephen Covey really emphasizes the importance of focusing on what we can control in order to maintain productivity, manage overwhelm. Again, like Oudi said, change the narrative and connect to our power and ability to control what's around us. So this is another useful tip for you.
Thanks, Sneh. Just so you know, I put the 7 Habits book into the chat.
Oh, look at that.
I'd already put it in there, actually. We're on the same page.
On the same page.
Yeah, and I think, coming back to one of the things you said, Oudi, about like feeling positive and kind of having a positive mindset. One of the things in the sense of control is sometimes at this point, people are in very different places as to how they're experiencing, the pandemic in their personal lives, but also professional and who they surround themselves with. So you'll find that people perhaps used to connect with really well when things were, I'd say normal, but we're moving into a new normal. Perhaps you're on kind of different pages at the moment, and sometimes if you can control your surroundings and putting yourself and being influenced by positive people can help yourself to be in a positive mindset. And that does involve sometimes just saying no to certain things which are not necessarily going to put you in that frame of mind.
Those are some great pointers. So jumping off of what Jyoti said about there being a few simple and obvious things that would help us with balance, what would you guys think is important to make time for in our day-to-day?
So for me, I guess some of the simple and obvious things, and it's kind of all out there in the literature in terms of exercise, sleep, nutrition, keeping yourself well, finding yourself kind of enough time for the different areas of your life. But I think one of the things we tend not to think about or prioritize or even plan for is actually a bit of fun. And it's really hard to think about at this time because the media out there can be quite negative. We're not, there's a lot of stresses, there's thoughts on your mind from whatever angles or roles that's coming on. But the kind of concept of having fun is kind of built back into neuroscience. So it's not just about kind of, it's a nice thing to do, but it can have a positive influence on the brain in terms of kind of boosting that dopamine and the happy hormone, if you like. And when we allow ourselves to be spontaneous, creative, or enjoy new experiences, actually help create new physical connections in the brain. So by giving yourself that moment of downtime and fun, you can start to kind of, you might not be actively thinking about it, but have that moment or that spark where another problem in a different area of your life can kind of trigger a response or a solution to that. So, when we observe children, actually innately and naturally, they have lots of fun. The way they learn and, the education system is built around play. So it's almost an innate ability we need to try and reconnect with. And then think of kind of practical ways to think of having some fun. So if you have children, play with them, engage with them at their level. If you don't have some, I have some free for Zoom any day, and I think there's a lot of things out there on the internet at the moment about kind of whether it's puzzles or quizzes or virtual socials and happy hours, which you can think about to do for fun. And I would challenge you to think beyond Netflix, just to kind of get that moment.
That's great, Jyoti. I think that's a big takeaway from me. I think I'm going to schedule in some fun for the rest of the week, something that can easily fall aside. And I also just wanted to add on, I think that Nikita and Oudi have both demonstrated the importance of taking time to breathe. And I just want to echo that and say that it's important to take some time to reflect during the day. It was a really powerful exercise. I had an image of a skyscraper kind of tilting, and I thought that was, it just kind of makes you focus on the moment. So it's important to schedule that during the day, find out what works for you to recharge so that you're consciously engaged in each activity rather than working on autopilot. So really take that time to first identify what gives you energy. It could be practicing some sort of mindfulness like breath work, could be a light workout, could be some alone time. If you might be more extroverted, you might find that you recharge with loved ones and that's more beneficial for you. So whatever works, try and find a way to fully engage with each task that you're going through during the day. And what's really important about that is taking time and kind of downtime to allow all of it to integrate. So this is more about managing your energy for each task rather than focusing on time spent in order to really maximize the investment.
Absolutely. Those are some really great points. And as you guys know, I definitely advocate fitting in time to reconnect with your breath. And as Oudi said, it really helps you slow down your nervous system, and it helps you approach your issues from a place of response rather than reaction. Okay, so final question. How can having a fixed routine benefit us?
So this question actually really ties into the first 2 points, which contribute to managing burnout or distress. Having a fixed routine will ensure that we're making time for the important things that we need to get done during the day and scheduling it in a way that we can invest our energy into those things. So fixed routines allow us to feel in control, which, as mentioned, is a way to kind of combat the feeling of overwhelm. And, especially having some control in uncertain times, it's empowering and it has that effect of reducing stress. So routines also make us more efficient. If they've been repeated often enough, then it becomes subconscious, which allows us to work on different things rather than spend and invest time on planning our day, scheduling what we need to do next, becoming overwhelmed with how many tasks we need to manage. Routines are really useful in that sense.
Yeah, and I think, as we've all worked from home a bit longer, I think in the UAE at least it's been around 3 months, the novelty of kind of working from home in your pajamas and rolling straight out, out of bed onto the laptop or whatever it might be, kind of worn off. So I think agree in terms of efficiency and just putting yourself in the right mindset for the day. So, when you wake up and you know what you're doing, you're not reinventing the wheel, you're just kind of there and you know what you're doing. And I think establishing a clear morning routine for you or the people you live with kind of sets your intention for the day, helping you to feel more productive and energized. And there's a lot of literature out there about, successful people and what their morning routines are like, and they share it. So, if you're interested, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Oprah Winfrey, Richard Branson kind of all share what their morning routine is like, and they all vary, but the common theme is around getting up a little bit earlier, doing something which involves some movement, so some kind of exercise, taking some time, kind of back to Sneh's point, in the morning to kind of plan and reflect and think about your day or your week or your month ahead, and doing some learning, so something to kind of stretch your thinking a little bit. And morning routines are becoming a bit more famous, if you like, in terms of people sharing those, but I think where we're getting to now is about also thinking about the evening routine and winding down as we start to work and live in kind of the same space in terms of being able to switch off properly.
Okay. Wow, that was really great, guys. So I have some questions for you from the group. The first one is, how can you focus when all areas of your life need focus, as a parent, as a for work, and as a teacher? How do you choose to focus? Yeah.
I can start with a couple of tips, and then maybe Oudi can add. I guess the point of focus, and this is what we were. I kind of, if I go back towards the wheel thing, is that all areas need focus, and sometimes it is about taking a step back and trying to almost map out and plan what kind of focus you want to give to those different areas, and how do you schedule and managing it all within the same pace. So it might sound basic, but like something like list writing or journaling, or putting all your thoughts down on a piece of paper just to see what you have to manage, and then kind of looking back at that and going, how do I prioritize, how do I schedule, can be a really practical way to try and give yourself the space rather than just letting the thoughts running through your head.
Yeah, and just echoing that, I think one of the points about having a routine in your day will also help you manage your energy to invest 100% in each area that's valuable to you, but it's about not doing it simultaneously, which might take away. I think a lot of us have seen the videos of news anchors where their families are in the background, their children might come in the background. It can be difficult, but setting some boundaries so that you can invest and do your best in each area, it can be very helpful for you.
Okay, great. Another question is, how does one go forward as a new graduate? I am an all-A student and I had an offer, but it was retracted.
Does anyone want to take this? Or shall I? Yeah,
Sure.
I think that this time is pretty volatile and uncertain. And I can empathize that new graduates might have a really difficult time when you face those types of situations where something you were expecting didn't come through. But here again is where you need to kind of consciously exercise resilience. Subconsciously, of course, you will feel that. And I think it's important to acknowledge the feelings that come with any sort of disappointment or any sort of rejection, right? But once you acknowledge it, again, go back to focus on what it is you can control. That's how we can consciously activate that resilience.
And I think just to add to that, it's kind of, it might be disappointing without kind of knowing where or what is happening. It's putting yourself in the mindset of seeing this as an opportunity and seeing, right, what could I be doing instead that I couldn't have, and looking ahead to think of actually what's the world, what's my kind of graduate position going to look like in a few months, because there's a lot of talk about new normal, and trying to put yourself in that space can keep you more motivated, engaged, and having a bit more of a forward lens on things.
Can I jump in with one last comment?
Yeah, but just, sorry, before you do that, just maybe we can address this from a way to cope with extremes, because the entire situation is extreme. The outcomes have been extreme. A lot of people have been dealing with things that were unforeseen and they couldn't have even accounted for to begin with. So how do you cope with extremes in this kind of situation, in the unknown and uncertainty?
So I was just gonna, maybe what I was about to say kind of fits, because I was just gonna mention that if you look at a lot of athletes, like for example, UFC fighters, what they do, are boxers, what they do is they actually take on challenge where they actually know they're gonna lose. They're not going in expecting to win. They're fighting somebody who they know they're unmatched in a certain area of fighting. And what that does, it takes them into what we call deep waters. And they know they're gonna come out of the challenge and out of the adversity much stronger. So they know that adversity breeds advantage. That's the crazy part. So as human beings, we tend to want things to be easy on the surface, but deep down, we don't. Deep down, we actually have this craving, this yearning for adversity, or at least for the outcome of adversity, which is advantage and kind of sharpening our skills. So yeah, I mean, setback is part of life. Failure is part of success. And so it's just part of the equation. You gotta just accept it and focus on, like you guys said, on what you can control.
Okay. All right. I hope that was helpful. But I have another question here. So it's hard to meet new people at this time. People are not comfortable with online apps, etc. Some of my single friends are feeling that life is passing by and it's difficult to meet new people at this point in time. How do you de-stress yourself when facing such thoughts?
I think for me, some of the thoughts around de-stressing, it doesn't matter what the source of stress is, but some of the similar kind of principles apply in terms of how to manage your stress, and thinking more broadly about, okay, what can I do to manage my stress level. So what would you have done, if you were stressed at work, or what are some of the kind of interventions or things you would have put in place? What are some of the things you could do to relax? What are some of the things you can do to have fun or relax and unwind? And I know it doesn't translate specifically to kind of necessarily meeting people, but the source of stress is different for everyone, and we're all experiencing different challenges, but there's some very kind of basic things we can just do to manage the feeling of stress.
And also, I think it's really important that as individuals, we don't just sort of move over any negative emotions or move over any negative situations that we're facing, right? So the first step, I think, in any situation, whether it relates back to the person who lost their opportunity or this new situation where it is difficult to connect with people, is to acknowledge the frustration, acknowledge it, become aware of it, and then focus on what we can do. So this time, if we are being honest here, of course it is difficult to connect with people in a physical space, because of course everyone's taking precautions, and in certain instances the governments have imposed self-isolation policies where we're unable to get out and meet people physically. But if we really take some time to reflect on that and connect with our values of connecting with people, what's important about it, and what other ways do we have available to us, such as these Zoom calls, which have become so common. What other ways do we have to connect to other people? What's important about it? And just take that time to reflect. It can help us maximize this uncertain time.
Okay, great, guys. Thanks so much for that. If there are no more questions, perhaps you guys would just like to take a moment and leave any last minute points that you want us to kind of hold on to, and then we can just wrap it up.
Ladies first.
I'll start, and then I'll let, but following on from Sneh's point about kind of the feeling of acceptance is, something we all need to kind of get used to. It's kind of very easy to get caught up in the different things you should or shouldn't be doing, or you're putting unrealistic expectations on yourself. And I think, just accepting where we are and just trying to think about how to deal with it. And if it's too hard to think about, the next week or the next month, kind of focusing on the day-to-day and getting those simple things kind of just in place for you can kind of help with the balance and resilience for kind of the longer term.
I'm trying to think of an articulate wrap-up point, but to be honest with you, the things that are coming to my head right now are the takeaways that I personally have experienced through conversing with these other individuals, talking about resilience. The breath work was so powerful, the imagery associated with that, the BMV strategy, and points Jyoti made about fun into your day in order to really emphasize the importance of, like, again, work-life balance and just what's important to you. So I think that if I had these takeaways after hearing everybody else's, really just think about the most important thing that you've taken away today and try to apply that to your lives. See if that has an impact.
Yeah, I don't know what else I could say except that, like you guys said, getting some structure into your life, focusing on what you can control, your breath, and all the things we talked about. If I was going to say one last thing, it'd be like a simple little thing that I recommend for kids. And that is that to create what's called a beat boredom list. So when a kid is bored, I think boredom is just forgetting about your options, right? Because when you come up to a bored kid and say, hey, do you want to do this? They're like, yeah, you just forgot that was an option. So it applies to adults too. So you make a list of all the things that you love to do in your life. And if you can't do the first item, you can't go out and socialize and connect with other people, you go to the next item. That can't do that, go to the next item. The list is quite extensive, I'm pretty sure. And I think what we do is we get caught up and we get, fixated on, I want to do this and nothing else. And then we just get, it just stops you in your tracks and you get nowhere really. So I just want to say thanks again, guys. It was a lot of fun. And if any of you guys would like to participate in the reading initiative, please reach out. We send you a free chapter or two. You read it online, you record it, and you connect with somebody around the world. So thank you again.
I'll be reaching out for that.
Thanks, Nikita.
How do we reach out? How do we reach out? Sorry.
Maybe we can, should we
leave
put our
contact details? Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so maybe we can leave the contact details in the box if you guys would like for the panelists. And if anyone wants to reach out and get more information on anything that was spoken about, they could do that. But yeah, thanks so much everybody for joining. That was great.
So great.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks
Thank you,
everyone.
Arun.
We'll wrap it up. Thank you.
Thank you. That was fantastic. Thanks, Arun, Nikita, Sneh, Audi, and Jyoti. Thanks a lot. See you
Thank
guys.
you for
Guys,
joining.
bye.
Bye.
Bye.